In this podcast episode, myself and my dear friend Corrine, who is a criminologist and the host of Human Design and True Crime podcast, her and I will be going over and discussing the podcast episode that was put out about a month and a half or so ago with Aubrey Marcus and Dr. John Demartini around the notion of good versus evil. This was an incredibly polarized podcast, so much so that Aubrey has launched a contest around debating who won, who whose point whose point won in the arena. And we won't be so much talking about who won or who didn't, but we will be discussing the intricacies of the topics that were discussed, the viewpoints that were shared, and I will be adding in what I believe should have been included in this conversation, along with some reviews of the things laid forward by Dr. John and Aubrey. So join me and her in this podcast and comment and let us know what you think afterwards. We say some pretty spicy things. Let's go.
There was from both sides, like Dr. John struggled with the flexibility. Like he was trying, like you said, he was trying so hard to be that intellectual person. And that's cool, but like you're not hearing you're hearing what he's saying and you're responding with facts when he's responding with emotion. So like you're seeming cold, and that's where people like shut down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, the lack of empathy and
yeah,
sensitivity was, very apparent with Dr. John for sure.
yeah, yeah. So I thought that was just interesting. Like that's like instantly things come up. Like I can relate to this viewpoint of Dr. John, and I think like that's where so many people struggle because like in the field you have to like in what he's worked in, you have to, I believe, in order to be successful, and that means like you yourself be healthy and happy and be able to decompress and find the support, right? You have to be able to not see things polarized, not see things as good or bad or as evil, good or evil. Because in this realm, if we do that, then we'll see everything as evil. And that will just like destroy us. It will eat
Mm-hmm.
you alive.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to find, I think it was just right away. It was like, wow, like we live in a world that like really struggles to like pick out the little positives, like, or like the little nuances that are maybe like inherently good or um could be representative of inherently good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Also, like what came up is that humans are inherently selfish. We have to attach ourselves to something ultimately from this polarized lens. And when we do that, we get attached to our judgments and our opinions. And like that's very much Gene Key 17 and 18 I see happening a lot.
Mm-hmm. Even
Oh,
27 and 28 with the selfishness and purposelessness.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because yeah.
Yeah, what I wrote down with that is that powerlessness is bred from these polarized labels and judgments. And I did create a clip where he talks about that because he says that if you look at somebody who's had something quote unquote seemingly bad happen to them and you just label that event as bad as them being a victim, then like you keep them trapped in that. There is no like liberation from it, which is also obviously like very 39 and 55. And it's so true because, yeah, like if everything is just good or bad, and the events that happen and the people that perpetuated them are just bad, and the people that it happened to are just good, then there is no sense of like, okay, there's no sense of liberation and freedom because you're just powerless to these random acts of violence that anybody slash evil people can perpetuate. And if there is like, he's even like, Aubrey even asked him, do you believe in just pure evil? And he said, no, I don't. And that's true in my opinion. And I feel like it is very much reflected in like what they're talking about, which is a very prevalent ideology in the spiritual field, right? Like this whole notion of unity
Mhm.
and oneness. And so, like, they're talking about that. And that's the premise, like, the foundational premise that Dr. John is coming from. That Aubrey is like, I agree with you. I think that that's a great ideology to have, but I don't know that it's practical. I don't know that it's helpful. And I think it actually might be harmful. And then, like, his whole thing, I think, then goes to show why he believes that to be harmful. But when you go, okay, there is only one, and both good and evil are a part of the one, then that gives you, like, when you look at the yin and yang symbol, like, you get the visual representation of there is a little bit of light even within the darkness, and there's a little bit of darkness even within the light. Therefore, it is only one. But so to just stop at labeling these people and these events as pure evil, what you're saying is they are just that. They can never be anything different. There's no hope, aka we are powerless to them.
Yep.
It
Yeah.
it will forever just be a battle of good versus evil,
Yeah.
which goes against what Dr. John is saying when he's like, I want to understand why. I want us to understand how we got here. And I want us both sides to see where there is positive and negative, where there is good and bad to each side. Because
Hmm.
when you show that there is good and bad to each side, then you show the unity of opposites. Then you actually showcase and help bring people into that sense of unity where you can then drop the labels, you can then see your sameness and see the lessons and see the benefits and go, okay, cool. We see that. Now there isn't this polarization. Now there isn't this fight. Now we can just move forward with deciding, what do we actually want to do?
Yep.
Is this benefiting us? Is this not benefiting us? There's good and bad. Okay, we're both suffering and we're both benefiting.
Hmm.
How do we want to approach that from
Yeah.
that lens? But the biggest thing that I see in the whole entire thing is that there's one time where Aubrey said, so there's an upside to murdering children.
Oh my God.
And Dr. John says, yeah. And Aubrey's like, we gotta, that's where he's like, we gotta stop there.
Yeah.
And but then he doesn't go, so but then Dr. John gives that story, gives two different stories about upsides that happened after the murdering of children. And he's like, okay, I see that. And but what about the child that was murdered? That you took their agency away from them. And I think that this just goes to show that everybody who's going to be in that same level of mindset is simply just coming from a fear of and a misunderstanding of a lack of understanding around death.
Yes. Yes.
Because if you understood death and you understood the process of reincarnation and all these different lives and the benefits of incarnating as the villain and then experiencing that, and then the next life incarnating as the victim and being able to find that unity of opposites between your own incarnations, like, this is stuff that I learned and adopted from reading Journey of Souls and, like, the very beginning. And I it's interesting to me to see Aubrey coming in, and what I think he really highlights too is the lack of full integration
Oh my God.
within the spiritual community
Uh-huh.
of the very things that they talk about and that they preach and they say they believe in. But the moment those beliefs are forced to become embodied in the presence of resistance, in the mirror of this whole conversation that is happening, it's like, whoa, 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 wait. And what I, like, got was like, okay, so if we can sit here and it seems like Aubrey is sitting here and essentially being somewhat okay. I don't think he ever was fully open to this conversation.
He wasn't. He wasn't. He was so
Triggered instantly.
instantly. He was
Yeah.
so triggered. He was so defensive, right? And it's like, but that's where too, I just get so upset and worked up. And I've learned how to like detach myself more and not get too upset and too worked up or too involved with like the spiritual community. just like taking like talking about these events, talking about these situations, using them in their context and narrative of like whatever works for them, like claiming they work with it, so on and so forth. And it's like, but you don't, because in you're really out of place, right? Because here is someone that Dr. John is like expert. I think that expert is a challenging word. I understand it in regards to like the court of law and like the system, why expert is so pertinent, like why we have that word. Um, and like it helps people discern like scope of practice. And what we see right now and what we're seeing consistently in like the spiritual community of like people grabbing onto these conversations or talking trauma or talking abuse and talking mindset is like you are going outside of your scope of practice, which is totally okay as long as you're open to the perspective from someone that might know maybe a little bit more, whether it's from their experience, like, or whether it's from their degree or combination or both. I think that an expert is someone that constantly wants to search for an understanding and is open and like very much, even though like Dr. John struggled to get on his level of communicating at points where there was that resistance, like he embodies that in the sense that he's open to the why always.
Mm-hmm.
Open to the why always. And like what people have a really hard time with, and I've just consistently noticed, is like the collective has this conditioning of like, just because we're providing a reason doesn't like means we're excusing a behavior. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not like we're providing a reason, just like when you think of like an engineer, like there's a defect that happens. So what are they going to do? They're going to hopefully go right to the source, determine what the defect is, rewire, revamp, do what needs to be done, provide the reason as to why it happened, and then go in there differently.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're saying like there's a defect, we had to fix it, that's not an excuse. Like they had to find the defect.
Mm-hmm.
And human beings, that's what we have to do, essentially. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that the collective has a really hard time, especially like I see in the spirituality world that has this obsession with like the mindset, right? Like Aubrey said at one point, like, um, what do you say?
That you can just make your mind up to not do something or to do something, and then that'll be what you do or don't do,
Yeah,
which
and
is
the
not
not it.
not the case at all.
And
And
like,
I think enough people have gone through this in their life where you're like rehearsing a conversation that you're about to have with somebody. You're like, okay, I did it. This is what I'm gonna do. And then you get in the moment and you're like, and you do something the complete fucking opposite. And that's like what he's highlighting, what Dr. John is highlighting is about the response in the now, based
it's
off of whatever
not,
your values are, whatever role you're here to play, whatever benefits you and suits you the most is how you're going to respond,
Mhm.
not your mind. Your mind may catch on, and yes, that may be how you actually respond in the moment. But him bringing up the whole like amygdala aspect of it around these decisions are made in the amygdala, not the prefrontal cortex, not the rationale. You're sitting in this imaginary state thinking about the rationale, but it'll be your amygdala in the moment, which I think is actually really beautifully demonstrated by Dr. John bringing this to his awareness and him having been surprised by this conversation, not expecting this conversation,
Mhm.
AKA then
Amygdala.
his amygdala is like, wait, hold up. This is not like consecutive. This is not rational. This is not what I intended to talk about. Then he brings in this whole conversation, and now you can tell his amygdala is activated, his survival response is activated. We now know Vailana is pregnant. He's going to be a dad. Of course, he's triggered by this fact that somebody's like, hey, fucked up shit happening can have an upside to it. And he's like, absolutely not. No.
Oh, yeah.
And like the whole, what you talked about of like, there's a defect makes me think of the 50 and the third and the three. the
Hmm.
corruption and the innocence, the corruption of innocence, and how that channel, the 360, mutates the biology, it mutates the physical vessel. And so, what we're trying to say is like, so Aubrey at one point says, I believe that there are things that we just inherently know that there are just like these, I forget the exact word he used, but he's essentially saying that, like, for humanity, whether it's just humanity or whether he believes it's like a universal law or whatever, he believes because he's like, we can feel it in our bodies, which is empathy.
Yep.
We can feel it in our bodies that this is not okay. Well, first of all, why does your body say that that's not okay? One, survival. Again, amygdala, survival. And then two, it's going to be based off of your epigenetics as to what your genetics have experienced slash what you have experienced in your lifetime.
Hmm. I specifically wrote that part down. Um, he said certain things are wrong, and that's what he went on to say, like you can feel it in your body. And I said, had written down like which trauma wrong doesn't exist, right? Like it's survive and protect or die. On the
Mm-hmm.
outside, what happens is so, and like this is, I have like such a beautiful memory and moment of this exact situation, like playing out, happening, like, and how like we, the humans on the outside, we're labeling the experience of the individual. Like we try to like reframe it to either fit the narrative or to understand it more. But what we're doing is like, again, we're outsiders of their reality. And what we're actually doing is just usually pathologizing an individual for responding in a way that they felt their body felt needed to respond. And like,
Mm-hmm.
so like certain things are wrong. I had a kiddo specifically, it was one of the most disgusting meetings I've ever been on in my life. And it was supposed to be like, it was like 20 school officials. It was so gross. And this kiddo was like involved in a really bad fight. Like they attacked a staff, and like the staff was so mutilated, like you couldn't recognize them. And like other kiddos like ran, like it was really bad. Like it was probably the people on campus that had been there for decades said it was like the worst attack they've ever seen. um and so like naturally they became my case and my kiddo. And throughout our work together, we really dove into this understanding of like things aren't in, because that's what I always did. Like first things first, there is no such thing as good or bad, right or wrong, um, evil and whatever. Those words will not exist in this room. We are going to expand and understand what's going on. Like, so whenever one of the kiddos like would say like, well, what I did was wrong. No, 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 you did what you did for a reason. Let's explore what that is, because let's see what's going on. What was the reason behind it, right? Um, and so during this meeting, they literally said they were getting so argumentative because everything that was happening wasn't fitting their narrative. And they ultimately didn't want this kiddo in school, even though his progress was tremendous, like it just out of this world, because they genuinely were doing the work. And like they felt like, oh, someone cares, like, and Corinne actually cares and isn't judging me. Um, and they literally said, well, you know the difference between right and wrong, right? And this kiddo, who was like a kiddo of very few words, literally stopped and said, I may know the difference now, but it's because I've been working through a lot of my trauma. But back then, when it happened, I didn't know. No, I didn't. And like scientifically, that's so spot on. Like in that moment, it's not about right or wrong. Another peer started the attack, the kiddo was placed in the situation, and their body and their amygdala and their memory and of their experience said, you need to respond and protect yourself. And so they just did whatever needed to be done to protect themselves. And it was like, I literally was speechless. I was like for a 14-year-old to say like, no, I didn't know it was wrong. And it wasn't wrong. That didn't exist. And it's
Right.
such,
And so what colored that experience for that child? Like you don't have to go into like super grave detail, but like generally speaking, what was the ideology in that moment? What was his experiences like that brought him to the place where that was his body's response?
abuse, neglect, generational systemic involvement, being ripped from the home, judgment, like systemic judgment. And yeah, I mean, really the generational, of course, like there were mistakes made by the family, but the family were, it was very much enhanced. They already had an eye on this family for generations type of thing. And so they see someone and this kiddo has witnessed also their mother being attacked by a system and just judged and placed under these conditions, and as a result has been ripped from the home and like crazy things. um and so now and this kiddo is very loyal on top of it, very like that loyalty just runs through their bones. Like that's just who they are. Um, and so now to see a person, another kiddo that they had some sense of loyalty to, there was an established transactional relationship, to see that person engaging in the like acting or attacking at that point, it just became discombobulated. I mean,
Mhm.
and this is what I used to tell my kids all the time. When we lose control, when we start acting with our bodies, we've lost control of our minds. In
Mhm.
those moments of fighting, we've completely lost control of our minds because our body is responding.
Mhm.
And that's, yeah, they were loyal to this other relationship. That's who was one of their protectors on campus. So although that kiddo was the initial aggressor, their body said, there's a fight going down, you need to protect yourself, and this is who the enemy is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to note that and to discuss it because,
Hmm.
this makes me think of the Gene Key 11, Shadow of Obscurity, and he's talking about in the city that there is no such thing as good versus evil. We're upwarding the knowledge of it, and it's just it's an obscuration of light. And so to have a child potentially as early as infancy experience abuse from whether it is the parents, whether it's somebody in the home, whether it is a grown adult that is outside of them, for them to experience that at that young of an age, their sense of love, protection, safety, connection, all this kind of stuff, their interpersonal relationship with themselves and others and the relationship to themselves gets corrupted.
Yes.
So if that corruption is the stem of everything else bad or negative or evil that they do, then that person wasn't just inherently bad.
No,
And
never.
so to look at somebody and be like, you're just inherently evil, you've created a stalemate. There's no solution. There's no
Uh,
solution. There's no getting past that.
no, it's stigmatized.
So
It's
what I don't understand is why, and I mean I do understand it, but why people are so afraid of asking why.
For answer, because this takes a level of reflection, because it's a mirror, right? That's
Mhm,
being held up. And so when you ask a person why, in regards to topics like this, there is a level of responsibility and accountability and reflection that has to be taken for
mhm,
themselves. Like for me personally, I've like never, I have never necessarily been like in abusive relationships. I've never necessarily been mad at the individual. And a lot of people have been like, why? Like, why aren't you angry at them? And I'm like, well, I mean, their life and their situation, like, this is a larger systemic issue. Like, this is a larger problem. And all I can do is like, I also wasn't innocent in the situation. I
mhm,
made choices that allowed, whether it's, those choices were done to out of what I knew and so on and so forth, but I still made those choices of getting myself involved in these circumstances, right? And so now what I have to do is recognize the signs and the patterns that are coming up and why I'm inherently drawn to these situations and set a standard for myself.
mhm,
And so like I've done things too. I've retaliated back. I've also become abusive in that relationship while I was being abused, right? Like it's that cycle. So I think, but a lot of people struggle to almost accept and like embrace an abuser or of any kind as like another human being. Like it's
mhm.
easier for them to see them as a monster because maybe that would make sense as to why they could hurt them.
Right.
And a lot of people really, there's just a lot of work that has to go into it.
Mhm,
And people struggle. We've also been taught, right? Like by society has told us like they don't want us slowing down. So we have hustle culture like just embedded and ingrained in every aspect of the system in our veins that we have to decondition from it. And like it's done on purpose because the moment we start to slow down is the moment that we can start to see, because then we're able to come into ourselves for a moment.
mhm,
And in those are the scariest moments for the system.
mhm,
And the people that uphold these norms and expectations, and boys don't cry or boys don't get emotional and women don't do this and women have to do this.
mhm,
uh, it's such a larger issue than the human in itself, but I think people really grasp onto control too. What can they control? And it's like I can control my understanding of the situation.
mhm,
Thinking of it as a larger issue feels too out of control. So I'm going to stay mad and stay
mhm.
angry at the individual that directly did the thing.
Right. Which keeps everybody in a state of powerlessness, which just keeps the loop going over and over and over again. Yeah, the what comes to me when highlighting this fear of responsibility is this fear of responsibility that kind of has two big things, like the impacts of what you just said in terms of systemic responsibility, in terms of like, okay, we're not going to look at just one person. We're going to look at a system and label that as good or bad. And we can see that in the world now. We've got the political system, right? And there are everybody is labeling the political system as good or bad and the people within it as good or bad. Yet it's so much easier to just look out and be like, okay, it's Trump that's bad. Okay, it's this person that's bad. They are the evil ones. They are the ones to blame. When in reality, every single person who wakes up every single day and willingly puts their time and focus and attention and energy into that very system is actually responsible.
Yes.
Because if you weren't playing their game,
Mm-hmm.
there
Would be
it
no
wouldn't
too.
it
It
wouldn't
wouldn't work.
it wouldn't exist. It wouldn't exist. So there is that, and there is the what I believe fear of empathy, fear of understanding is actually also present because in order to really move through the process, how Dr. John is describing, how we are describing, is you actually have to be willing, in order to understand somebody, you have to open yourself up to listening to them, to truly listening to them, to creating space within your own mind and your own heart to incorporate somebody else's experiences into your own worldview, into how your body experiences it and processes it, right? Because it's like, it's going to hit all the awareness centers. It's going to hit your physical body's awareness center, right? Like we can see Aubrey immediately being activated, like his physical body. He's a father. His body is like, absolutely not. This is wrong. I will fucking protect my wife and my child and whomever at any moment that I need to. That is physiological. Then you've got the mind that is like, well, I'm a good guy. So don't you dare sit here and tell me that I could potentially be a bad guy. Fuck you. No, I'm actually good. Right. So the mind awareness gets activated and gets triggered. And then you have the emotions that get activated and triggered. So in order to actually do what we're saying and what Dr. John has done and is trying to get Aubrey to do and is trying to get everybody else to do through this conversation is to go, okay, why are the evil people doing the things they're doing? Why are the evil things happening? So, in order to do that, we're saying, okay, you have to listen to their story. You have to be willing to, quote unquote, walk in this person's shoes. And if you were to walk in this person's shoes and you were to do so with all three awareness centers, by the time they were done sharing their story from beginning to end as to where it all started and how they got here, you would effectively, temporarily become that person. In order to actually get to a deep level of understanding and empathy, you would have to become that person temporarily. And to be able to go, okay, I felt what you felt. I saw what you saw. I thought what you thought. I get it. I understand. The only way to come to that level of understanding is through that deep level of sensitivity and empathy. And so if that happens, then now you've immediately fucked with the notion of the identity that you have latched onto that says, I'm a good person. I could never do something like that. The only reason why you're saying that and you're saying you could never do it is because your life's experiences haven't created the environment in which that was the response. Those were the morals. Those were the values that you cultivated. That was not the physiological trauma response that your body got encoded with, but it was theirs. And so if it was theirs, then that means that you could possibly, there is a possibility of you becoming the very thing that you're judging and fearing.
Yeah.
Which then extends all the way to the notion of God versus the devil. If you come to that conclusion, then you have to then go to that unity of opposites, like he's saying, and going, the devil is God. God is the devil. There is no fucking separation. It is all experiences and choices and consequences of those experiences and choices.
Yep.
And like he's saying too, like, in order for you to be a good person, a bad person has to exist to give you the opportunity to be a good person. There's
Uh-huh.
no point of Superman being Superman if there's not a fucking villain to protect people against.
Yep.
Your role is only given to you by the opposite being there to allow for the reason for that to even be there in the first place.
Yep. Yep. Mm. Mm-hmm. And I like how you said like listening, because that's something like we're taught very on, we're made to practice very early on in like my career and everything, like active listening, like what it truly is like succumbing. And like where a lot of people struggle, where which is natural, right? Because I think this comes back to Peanut. No, 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 no. Humans are inherently selfish.
Mhm.
And so when we do actively listen, we get attached and we struggle with the boundaries because maybe we feel bad and we don't want it for the person, or that makes us angry, when in reality it quite literally that moment has nothing to do with us, right? And so that takes a level of like work to say like, whoa, my attachment to this is like actually really selfish of me
Mhm.
because of this person. So people really struggle to do this in the
Mhm.
field too, like in every sort of way, because you have to have this understanding of yourself.
Mhm.
And one of the things like that kiddo I mentioned earlier, someone in a meeting, they were like, what is it about Corinne that has allowed you to trust her? And they said, she listens to me.
Mhm.
And that was like it. And on paper, I thought about this, like on paper, like they were like, okay, well, what else? And that's a perfect like that's a perfect representation of they don't understand like what listening means. Like
Mhm.
in my capacity, in my role, what I had the power to do and what I was supposed to do and what I came into the role doing, m- listening meant taking action that no one else had before.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think I love that you mentioned that. Like you have to place it's to listen, we have to place us ourselves outside of ourselves.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
Aubrey like was so in defense that that's a higher level of thinking. Like that amygdala, it's our brain sets us up for, like the way it's wired sets us up for failure. Like we go to the amygdala and then the prefrontal cortex. So it's like, woo, 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 woo. Okay. And
Mhm.
then hopefully you get through that and you're like, okay, wait, hang on, slow down. I'm processing. But he did not come out of that amygdala.
Mm-mm.
Even at the
No.
end, it's like, you're going to have your beliefs. I'm going to have my beliefs. And I'm like, homie, his beliefs are facts, though. Like,
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, they're not beliefs.
not beliefs.
There's evidence.
There's, they're, they're facts. Like,
Yeah.
um, yeah.
I think that this stems from a couple of different places. Like one, historically, epigenetics, right? We
Mhm.
have also been listening has not been a thing.
Nope.
It's not been a thing.
Uh-uh.
We've literally been bred to not listen to anybody but very specific people. We have been taught to not listen to ourselves, but to listen to other people in a position of power and authority, and then not ask questions. We're just told you listen and you follow instructions. You go where I tell you to go. And this is very 13-7, right? Like the listening pairs into the
Mhm.
leadership. We also have been told don't listen to the past. The past gets rewritten. Again, 13 ties to the past. We're not listening to our past. We're not looking at where we've been. We're not seeing the histories and the patterns and connecting the dots and going, oh, okay, I get it. Again, we're not listening to other people. We're not listening to the evil people. We're not listening to our collective society to be like, how the fuck did we get here? Or what do we actually need? We're being distracted.
Yes.
And that, like, I brought in the 11 earlier. And then as you were talking about distraction, I'm like, 11 pulls into 56. 56 is the gate of distraction.
Mhm.
So you have this obscuring of the light, this obscuring of reality, this false reality that we're all living within that is being run off of distraction, keeping you distracted so you don't stop, so you don't feel, so you don't listen, so you feel powerless, and you feel like it's too big of a fucking weight on your shoulders to be able to do anything, which is the fear of responsibility that comes through the 50. And like, it goes into too what he says too. And I did a recording too of this part in the book's Conversations with God, unusual conversations with God, something like that. And because they talk about this a lot in there, and she said that God in this says you can only know what you are by knowing what you're not. And that goes into like the whole roles thing. Like you can only know if you're good by there being evil and you coming up against it and being like, nah, that's not me. That's not what I choose. And like taking it to like the 30,000 foot perspective, the omniscience perspective, like we are all God. Evil, darkness is just aspects of God that have been obscured, that have gone so far away from the light that don't remember themselves. They don't know, they don't understand that the evil that they're perpetuating on other people is also hurting themselves in this process. They need to be remembered. They need to, remember who they are. We need to remember who we are. And we're living in this 3D world. Like everybody in the spiritual field is like, this is a matrix. This is a Maya. This isn't real. Okay. So if this is not real, and you know that, and you know that ultimate reality is like back in oneness, well, how the fuck are we going to get back there? The only way that we can navigate through all of this is having like ping-ponging back and forth off of like good versus evil, this versus that, finding our way, deciding what works, what doesn't work, to get us all out of the separation that we are in and back into unity. But we need this. We need the parameters. We need the limitations. We need this structure.
Limitations are beautiful.
And yet, because of the physical world and everything in it, and where we've gotten ourselves collectively, I think what Aubrey is very much beautifully showcasing here is like, it actually still scares the ever living shit out of people, even in the spiritual community, the ones who have clearly, truly not fully awakened, who seem like they've awakened, because I promise you and anybody else, if you've ever had a legitimate, full-blown spiritual awakening where God has fucking come into you and you have realized what you actually are, what this actually is, like, you would understand what Dr. John is trying to say. You would get it. And yes, your physical body and yes, maybe even your mind would be fucking terrified, but you would at least be willing to move in the direction of understanding, to be like, okay, this world as it exists is not set up for our ultimate benefit. So if I'm going to be sitting here preaching the new earth, I'm going to be sitting here preaching unity, consciousness, love, and all of this shit, then I need to understand that I can't keep waking up every single day buying into this fucking system. I can't keep living my life in the way that I've been living my life this whole entire time. Radical responsibility is the only way. Chaos, difficulty at the beginning is the only way. And this goes into, I think, the crux of it. And I was going to say this earlier, and I don't think I got, so this is a perfect point to like bring back to it. The crux of it is like, okay, we can sit here, we can, like, Dr. John can tell he can tell all of his stories about all of these people who had fucked up things happen to them, who he took through the whole process, and they were able to be grateful and to see the positive, to see the lights. We can do that with grown adults. We can do that maybe even with older children. But when we take it all the way to infants and babies, that's when we're like, oh, I can't take that same ideology and barrel it and infuse it down all the way to this level. I stop before I get there. There can't be anything good
Nothing good can come of that. But it exists. So because it exists and because it's happening, and because there is nothing that is not everything that all that is, then there is some level of benefit to the most heinous shit happening. And until we are willing to ask what that is, we don't find the solutions, we don't find the answers. And it also blocks us from getting there because the very judgment that we're projecting out onto that is the very judgment that is going to stop us from being able to create a new world, to create different solutions. We will literally be our own judgment.
Which we are, right?
We
And that's
are.
what we see collectively happening is like we are our own worst enemy. We
Mm-hmm.
are the judgment. That's where too, like, where the 18 comes into play so much, and like you just see it happening collectively. It's like this judgment is ultimately all a judgment and a testimony of how an individual actually feels about themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
they're projecting it out on the world. And now everything becomes a judgment. And it's just this one giant fucking cycle. And
Mm-hmm.
it starts with this ultimately like there's this resistance. Why is there resistance? For some reason, there's resistance within you to hear things and to do things or to like understand. And maybe it's not your sphere, or maybe like that conversation, you know, if Aubrey had become triggered and said, I want to be honest with you, I did not anticipate this conversation going where it is. And I'm recognizing that I'm not able to hold this space right now because of it. Um, that would have shown a level of integration.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just the same shit that we see all the time happening. Is like here he's now you're not integrating anything, you're not embodying anything.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been incredible to
Yeah.
see, like, say, hey, and that's where I've come up with resistance, and I've said it to like these higher spiritual leaders like Sahara and her team of like, babe, I'll go out there. No. Of like, for you didn't anticipate X, Y, or Z to come up. Well, as someone that lives in the depths of this, I don't see how it could not come up.
Mm-hmm.
And so you not being able to see where it was going shows your inadequacies. And I think a lot of people struggle, like, it doesn't mean that you're like an inadequacy or not having the information on you at that moment, or the lack of awareness doesn't make you less. What makes you less per se is when you're not willing to have the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
when you're not willing to go there. It's okay to not know.
When you're not willing to listen
Mm-hmm.
and bear witness to it. And like the thing where he's saying, like, you will attract the very thing that you fear. Aubrey is now a dad.
Mm-hmm.
He's got the gate 50, the gate 28 between his charts, fear of responsibility, 28's purposelessness. There, it's interesting to me because as a new parent, so he's never had children before. This is a brand new experience for him. And at one point, Dr. John is like trying to like highlight that like you're gonna become a villain to your own kid. Like you're gonna do things to your kid. It's gonna fuck your kid up. And Aubrey's like, no, no. There are such thing as like purely beautiful, purely good families. You don't know that. No, no, no. And what I got was like, okay, so going on the vein of like listening and understanding and putting yourself into somebody's shoes, if you do that as a soon to be parent, then what you're really asking, I think this is the crux of it. It's like two questions. What would it take for me to turn into the villain to my child? what kind of circumstances could potentially happen that might lead me to abuse my own kid, and or what may lead somebody else to abuse my child once they're here. There's a fear that this very thing that you have just created, this innocence, will be corrupted either by you or by the external world. And being in a place of denial around the inevitability of that is being in denial around the purpose of life.
Mhm.
So to be unwilling, like, it's a beautiful example, and Dr. John like talks about this around like how you can have like a mother who's found out that she's pregnant, and like on one side it's like, oh my God, I'm so excited, yay, and then you have another mother who's like, what the fuck, oh my God, what have I done? You're gonna label one of those as good as bad, right? Then you go into like my own lived experience, and this goes into this discussion about the system. My own lived experience of having a child at 19 while being with somebody who was abusive and controlling, being with a mother who was controlling in her own ways, and a lot of trauma surrounding that, going through the traditional medical system, having trauma and disconnection happen there, then her being born and getting to the place where she's 9 months old, and my mother talks me into trying to sleep train her. So she's in her room, a separate room from me, 9 months old. I'm trying to get her to sleep. She's waking up all throughout the night, as babies do, screaming her face off. I'm stressed out. I'm sleep deprived. I'm going through my own trauma response that my body has had from this whole thing / my entire life that has yet to be processed. In the middle of the night, she's screaming her face off. I'm holding her. And unconsciously, my hands start to do this. And in that moment of fury and sleeplessness and everything, of dysregulation, I have the thought, oh, I understand shaken baby syndrome.
I said this to my wife. I've never told her. I said this to her like a month ago. I had never told her this apparently. And she was like, wait, what? And like had me call my mom and tell my mom and everything, like of where I came to the realization of like, wow, because I was watching one of my mom's kids. I was a substitute for her daycare. And at this point, I'm older. Like, I'm like at least probably around 20, maybe, or whatever. But like, I had been around kids my whole life, so on and so forth. But like, all of the things going on, my life is a whirlwind at that point, especially in those years in adolescence. My life is not regulated. I have my own shit going on. And I'm watching this baby who won't stop screaming. And they're sitting in the car seat that like you can carry and they can sleep in it too.
Mm-hmm.
They're in that. And I'm just like mechanically like, okay, shh. And next thing I know, I'm like speeding up and going, and I'm going faster. And I literally like stopped myself and was like, holy shit, it's that easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's that easy. It's that easy. Does that make me a bad person? No. If something had happened to that child, I would be the bad person.
Mm-hmm. And nobody would stop and ask, why? Why did you do that? And is there a reason and a need to help you?
Exactly. What are
To be
the
there to support you?
What are the resources that are lacking, right? And that's what
Mm-hmm.
I approach my work from, that of like, okay, look at the systemic barriers, look at all these gaps we have in the system. Is a person really actually bad, or
Are they under-resourced?
are they under-resourced? Did they lack opportunity to obtain resources?
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah. And
Because
and let's be real, like even when we're looking at the most evil, heinous people, I can almost guarantee you those people did not come from their both immediate family and extended family. That was just like normal, everyday, average people that were super just like good people. No, they came from ancestral lines of people who were power hungry, of abusers and victims, and people who were perpetuating that. So that got bred into their very DNA. That was the foundation in which they learned what love, connection, protection, all of that meant and looked like. That was the version of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go into the example that we just gave about somebody like you and I, women and mothers who have gone to that place where they have killed their fucking kids. Like, I would have not been in that state, one, had I not been told, had I not gone against my own instincts, because up to that point we were sleeping together. We were co-sleeping, but I was incredibly fucking tired. I was exhausted because not of my kid, which I can tell now because of the difference that I went through with my son, whom I birthed, went through a wild pregnancy, did a home birth. I wasn't in a stressful environment, and I had done a lot of healing on myself already. So if I look at the difference between how I experienced motherhood over the last 3 years with him versus the first 3 years with my daughter, when I was unhealed, I was living with people who were abusing me in all these different ways, who were controlling me, who were withholding resources, who were guilting me for the resources they did give. Like, there's shame, there's trauma, there's all of this there. And then I'm told, do this thing, sleep train your 9-month-old baby. So I'm doing what I'm told, following the guidance of elders of the system, saying this is the thing to do. So I do it, and it creates more harm.
Yep. Which is parenting 101. Like, I love that you went there, and I love the video you posted the other day, because that's exactly what I try to explain to people, is that parenting is determined by society. At this point, it's not determined by the individual. We've given up the power to be a parent and to follow what society says we should do. Your baby's crying. We stop trusting our instincts and look for the external reason of like, why it's happening. Okay, so now society says, if your baby's crying, if it's a boy, you do this. If it's a girl, you do this. And we instantly start implementing this model that is not relational.
Mm-mm.
And it changes based on social expectations and norms, based on the time period, the exact moment that we're in right now. And so then we have all these people, and this is like a whole thing too, of like, disconnected from their parents and mad at their parents and like fixated simply on their parents being the bad person. And it's like failing to understand the times which created it. And that is the system. The system sells the books. It sells the models. It sells the male psychologists. It gives the male psychologists the rights to create diagnoses and say what is what and prescribe and treat and so on and so forth. We've already given up that much power by the time and when we ask what to do for our child.
Or when we are flat out told what to do, when we are forced what to do, because there are realities in which women who choose to take back personal authority over their own body, over the process that God gave them to create life, and to know how to do that, there are situations in which the institution will literally try to get that child taken away from the mother, because the mother says, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to listen to my own body. I'm going to listen to the direct relationship between me and my child. I'm going to listen to the biology that lives within me. I'm not going to buy in and be supportive of your system, buy your things, go to your places, listen to your people. I got this. I'm okay. So for Aubrey to sit there and to be like, there are things inherent within us that we just know. There are, and it's beautiful because he's about to potentially figure that out. Granted, he's probably pretty privileged in the fact that they're living in Austin, Texas. They have a lot of money. However, she wants to go through that, unless she happens to go through the modern medical system. If she doesn't, she stays out of it. Well, first of all, why did she decide to stay out of it? If she decides to stay out of it, it's likely because she understands the inherent risks that are within the current medical system. If she doesn't and she goes into it, then guess what? He's going to very quickly see the realities in which we live in a society where we abuse children and we profit off of children and women every single fucking day, and it's considered normal. And I was looking up some things on pedophilia. And I wrote this down because I thought it was very interesting. There was this article that said, pedophilia exploits vulnerability and destroys innocence.
Yes.
The very system in which we live does that every single day.
Every day.
If you look at the modern medical system, if you look at the modern economic systems, if you look at the modern workforce and the industrial workforce, the system is not set up for women. It's not set up for children. It profits off of women and children. It profits off of the separation between women and children and families and communities. It profits off of the abuse of women and children. There are doctors being paid a shit ton of money willingly, people handing their children over to a doctor who's going to go in the other room, strap their baby down, and then cut their penis skin off without any anesthesia. Mm-hmm. All in the name of what?
Medicine.
We have men and even women shoving their hands inside of women without getting consent. Mm-hmm. We have them ripping babies out, causing more harm than good. Like, if you have eyes to see and a mind that's willing to see, it is not hard to see where we abuse women and children every single fucking day. Telling a woman to go back to work 10 weeks after she's had a baby, it's abuse to that woman and that baby. Mm-hmm. Sending that baby to a daycare with complete and total strangers who may or may not also contribute to abuse, who they don't have any sense of safety and relationship established with, that in and of itself is abuse, whether they also experience sexual or physical abuse on top of that. Mm-hmm. The system in which we feed our children fast food and there's a lack of nutrients, where we're killing our fucking earth and we're killing our soil, and we're killing our air, and we're killing our water. We live in a society that profits off of exploiting vulnerability and destroying innocence and destroying our relationship to ourselves, others, and this planet. And people are living it every single fucking day. And the rub comes when you ask somebody to look at that and to look at something they thought was good. Like Dr. John says, you may only think something is good because you haven't zoomed out or you haven't lived through the experience long enough to see the downside, just like the other side. We live in a society where we have profited. Every single person today is profiting off of the system that we have and the evil people who are running it. They've created this system for us that we've been enslaved to, but we've also been profiting off of it. They're profiting off it every time we go to Walmart, every time we go on Amazon, every time we go and experience anything that takes our needs, that gets our needs from someplace else.
Yep. Capitalism. That's what it is.
It's it's the whole industrial fucking revolution. Like,
it's literally, that's what capitalism does. And it's inherently because every single person their level of greed, their level of what they need, their needs, whatever, look so different. They established this model of capitalism that literally says exploit the need, sell the resource, right?
And every single person, every single entrepreneur, every single healer, I'm exploiting the need for somebody else who wants to understand human design and doesn't, and is coming to me for a reading. I'm exploiting a need for somebody who is struggling with something in their life, doesn't understand the purpose, is struggling emotionally, mentally, whatever, and coming to me for a service. That's exploiting a need. Mm-hmm. We're all doing it. It's all the give and take. It's all the predator versus the prey. It's all. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of what are the long-term benefits and disadvantages? And what are our values? What works for most people, or what works for just the one? And we were all led down a path where I think it's so fucking beautiful. Because in the both in the podcast and in the Conversations with God book that I'm talking about, they bring up Hitler. And he's like, so do you believe Gandhi was a better or worse person than Hitler? And he goes,
I wrote this down too.
He goes, well, first of all, Gandhi was also said to be like a pedophile and abused his wife and blah, blah, blah. And you could see Aubrey Marcus be like, you just proved his point. Shit, sorry, you broke his mind. And then, so he talks about that. And then Dr. John says exactly what God in the Conversations of God says, where it's basically said, he did not do that on his own. He had the help of his countrymen. And it was only until millions of people had been killed where everybody else around him was like, okay, we've had enough. You've gone too far. Yep. It was the collective conscious at that time that created that experience that allowed Hitler to be Hitler. And then obviously whatever else in his childhood that happened, which was also connected to the collective experience. Yep. So none of us, there is not a single fucking person on the face of this planet that is innocent in terms of not having a part to play, not being to blame for where we are at today. Yep. And that's a very triggering fucking thought, because you have to go from one mindset and belief about your identity, about who you are, and transcend it and transmute it into another. And I took somebody through this thought exercise. And I think that this really beautifully talks about this whole process of judgment that we can see both in form and when we die. Thinking about it like in that context too. I was like, okay, think about whomever you identify to be the ones in charge of everything that you believe to be a problem, that you believe to be the evil, the wrongdoing of this world. Imagine whomever that is, whether it's one person, a group of people, I don't care. Just imagine them. Okay. They did it all. You are them in this moment. You did all of this fucked up shit. Okay. When you did that, what I'm telling you is, in the process of whatever morality, whatever sense of value set you have right now, you've got to set that aside and go, this doesn't exist. While you are being this person, that sense of value set and morality does not exist. You are this person who has the value set and morality that allowed you to do this. Okay. The deeds have been committed. You're Hitler. I want to just say that. You're Hitler. You've killed all these people. You've thrown them in the concentration camps. Okay. And then all of a sudden, one morning, you wake up all of a sudden now with the value set and the morality that you have right now as this good person. How are you going to navigate that in your own psyche? If there is no break in incarnational process, you, this one person, was the most evilest of being on the face of this planet, committed the most insidious, atrocious acts. And then all of a sudden you woke up to a mindset and a morality that is a complete and total opposite. What do you do then? How are you going to feel? How are you going to handle that in your own psyche and in your own body? You're going to be hit with 1,000 million ton bricks. The weight of the fucking world is going to come rushing into you. If you are made, say even bigger, say you are made to feel the pain that you caused in totality, in a split second that you wake up, you are forced to feel the pain that you inflicted upon everybody. While also holding the acknowledgement that you did that. So what are you doing? You are hurting yourself in that process, because there's no longer a separation between you and that. Now you have immense fucking guilt.
Yeah. Ooh.
And not only did you wake up to this, now in this different moral standpoint, but now you must stand in front of every single person you've ever done wrong. You must face them physically, in person. There's no separation in person between you and all of those people. Now, what are you going to feel? My guess is that you probably got some fear. Because, well, what are they going to do? What mindset are they now viewing you in? Are they still only in they were the victims? They're not in a state of empathy, in a dualistic experience that you're in. You've awoken to being in both sides. You've now come around to the other side. You're all of a sudden now a good person, but they haven't had the experience of you. What you're probably going to fear that they're going to fucking kill you. Right? At like most. At minimum, then you also maybe next fear judgment, fear ostracization, fear ignorance. They're going to completely ignore you. They're going to pretend you don't exist. They will not support you. It is you on your own. You don't get to be a part of the group anymore. Then how do you deal with that? Okay, wait, I was the bad guy. Now I'm not. But because of the sins that I committed in my past, even though I would never do those again, you're keeping me held into that previous identity. I'm being punished for what I did. There's no going back. There's no retribution. I can't do anything to change it. I am just that, even though I'm not that anymore. This is the very thing that every single one of us at a collective level is dealing with. Because yes, we may not have physically done the thing that the people in the Illuminati, the president, the whatever, the people who were in front lines at the war, we may not have done that. But if we were to empathetically put ourselves in their position, live in their shoes, we would have done that. And we would now have to grapple with the two-sidedness of our nature and what the fuck are we going to do? And am I going to kill myself and stop myself from evolution and keep myself in isolation? Keep myself in hell, right? Like eternal damnation is what we're talking about here in that kind of sense. Like that is the definition of eternal damnation.
Mm-hmm.
This is the whole fucking premise and notion of good versus evil and heaven versus hell, which religion has profited off of and continues to spread. And then so you have to understand that like what they say in terms of like, come and absolve your sins so that way you can be free of them before you go into the afterlife so you can go into heaven. It's also so cute. What's the biggest way that they say to do that? Is through confession. Through having somebody listen to you, say all of the things that you've done and confess to them all. Confess to what you've done, confess to whom you've hurt, to then go make amends with the people that you've hurt. They're describing the very process that is actually what we are needing to do at a collective level. But that whole process of going from being the most heinous, evil person to moving over into the light side is a very painful process. Because you would be forced to feel all of that pain. Mm-hmm. And I've had a physical lived experience of having this level of like universal, godly, unconditional love come in. And the moment it came in, I immediately felt everything else that was not that. All of the fear, all of the things that were labeled as love, but were not actually love. It was like the experience of unity. In that moment, I was like, oh, there is no separation. There is no difference. You can't have one without the other.
Nope.
So to think about that and to think about the pain, like the heartbreak that it causes just us when we do something simple, like you can break your own heart by saying something mean to your wife that wasn't you torturing her or murdering her, right? But you can feel a sense of like heartbreak and pain from committing very simple acts against somebody else that causes harm. So if you take that and then you imagine magnifying that to the level of which, if you put yourself in the place of, I was the person who was running a fucking ring of people who were abusing infants, who were mutilating infants, who were raping them, who were all of that, unfucking bearable. So also like empathetically put yourself in the state of the evil person. What fucking reason do they have to come back from their evilness? Because if they do, they have to face death. They have to face all, like the retribution of everything that they've ever done, and then still face a being or an energy of unconditional love that says, I still love you and it's okay. While also holding the experience, like the physical embodied expression and experience. This is what is stopping human beings from ascending, which everybody in the fucking spiritual community talks about wanting to do. That's actually the way to ascension. Because that would mean God would go and bury itself down into the darkest, deepest fucking parts of itself. So God has to hit. Unconditional love has to come all the way down until there's nowhere left to go, until it is everywhere, which means that unconditional love has to touch the most deprived, evil fucking people. And if you and I, Aubrey, his followers, can't have empathy and understanding for that, can't take that high level meta spiritual perspective and understand how it then funnels down all the way into this reality, then like my question for Aubrey and everybody else is like, well, then what the fuck is all you're searching for? What's all your investigation for? What's your podcast for? What's your whole entire life for? Because yes, we can come here and we can enjoy and we can experience, great. But you're benefiting.
Yep. Yeah.
And if you're going to choose to live your life studying spirituality and trying to find awakening and trying to facilitate healing, and you're unwilling to go to this place, then you're not actually about what you say you're about. And we're not going to ever actually find the solutions to bring about the healing and the heaven on earth that you say you want to create for everybody. Because do you want the people who have been the most heinous and evil, do they get to experience heaven on earth too? Do you want them to be absolved and to go back into the light? Do you want evil to continue to exist or not? Because that's the only way to make it go away.
Sips tea.
Sips tea.
Yeah.
Like, what else is there to say?
Yeah. You can't. Yeah. You can't pick and choose who gets, and this is a huge problem with the system too, right? Of what we've been taught and how it operates. The system in place, the structures in place determine who gets to heal and who doesn't. Who gets harmed and whose harm gets recognized. And like it's just consistent, and we see it and we see it and we see it over and over and over again. And it's like, why as human beings does a certain individual or a certain person or authority or whatever determine whose harm gets recognized?
Whose story gets heard, whose story gets told. Well, it's only been the victors really up until this point whose story gets told.
Yes. Make a hero story, right? Don't flood people with a reality that, God forbid, makes them face something that's not like ideal, right? There's that 11 too of like this alternate reality. Let's flood them with this reality. If you do and they do it in the simplest of ways. If you parent your child like this, you'll be able to sleep at night because your baby will be tired. You'll have the bed to yourself. They're gaining independence, developmentally, all of the things. As you're like, I'm fucking exhausted. That was the opposite of my experience. But they get to decide.
Yeah. And that moves us into like the notion of like free will versus destiny. And balancing the two and then reconciling like human beings being given free will was in the research that I've done and the beliefs that I hold now was like an experiment. Prior to that, all of God's creations didn't have free will. Prior to us, all of God's creations were just created in a likeness and image of God. They were created with a purpose. They lived out that purpose. And when their purpose was done, they absorbed back into God. But there was no free will. There was no freedom of choice. Humans were given freedom of choice. In order for God to actually know itself in totality, which is the city of the 28, which is the shadow of purposelessness. In order for God to know itself in totality, especially if you slap the label of God being unconditional love, then, well, there can't be any conditions to God. God's expression cannot have any limits. It is infinite.
And then we see
again, something we believe, everybody talks about. God is this infinite being that cannot, like, energy cannot be created nor destroyed.
And then we're like, people are like, okay, but the Bible says this. God says this. So this is what it means. And there's the limitation.
God is not within me. God is external to me. And so if God is external to me, then that's where I have to listen to anybody and everybody else. But if God is internal to me, then you have to believe what Dr. John is saying of like everything outside of you is a reflection of you. You've drawn it all to yourself for a higher purpose. Stop labeling as good or bad. Just figure out what the higher fucking purpose is, learn from it, move on from it, make different choices, create different value sets. And keep going. That's exactly what the fuck God is doing. God had to be its most heinous fucking version of itself through forgetting itself and going to the depths of its own forgetfulness and density that it possibly could, to go all like to stretch itself to the very capacity, to its very limits. Does God have limits? Or is God limitless? Because if God is limitless, then, well,
we're gonna see
that means God's gonna be the one who creates the humans, who creates a section of humans who look at fucking babies and are like, I want to eat you.
Literally. And the more we deny, right? Like, that's where I said, like, Aubrey too, like briefly mentioned, is like the more we deny the reality, the more we allow the reality to exist. Like, by Aubrey being in such denial, he was the person that enables the harm to perpetuate, because you can't get out of your own fucking way right now. So because your own selfishness is coming in, because your own humanity, because your own defense mechanisms are coming in, whatever the external reasons are, you right now are perpetuating a cycle of abuse that is allowing the very thing that you're all worked up about to happen. Why? because you don't want to hear it. You can't hear it. You can't listen. You can't understand it.
And it's what happens in every single family that has the abusers, that know the abuser is in the family, but they're like, we don't talk about
it. And that's what society has done, right? Up until the more recent years of like, shh, we don't talk about it. We don't talk about it. People knew the abuse was happening, but they didn't talk about it. You go silent, go silent, go silent, because silence allows it to happen. The less people talk about it, the more it can thrive.
Well, and that's literally been bred into our culture too, with religion, with science, with all of these different ways in which, with men telling women, like, all of the ways in which we were labeled hysteric and we were not given access to our own basic fucking human rights, or where the group of religious people burned people who they said were the witches because they were experiencing something that they didn't understand, or that I was like, no, listen to us. And don't listen to this. Don't talk about this. If you talk about this, you're going to die. Like, we've actually had bred into our bodies, into our DNA, suppression of the voice, suppression of expression. The unconscious has been created. The collective unconscious, the individual unconscious has been created through separation, suppression, and silence.
Because it exists.
But because it makes certain people uncomfortable, or there's a certain group of people who want you to view reality in a certain way and are threatened by you hearing anything else that goes against that view of reality, which has now become your own fucking psyche and your own mind that now says, if I hear anything that goes against my own sense of identity, my own sense of my world, it's a threat, shut it down.
Yeah.
And everybody experiences that in some way, shape, or form. Like, Aubrey experienced that when him and his two lovers got on a fucking podcast and said, hey, this is how they expressed to the world, this is how we function in our relationship. This is the unique kind of relationship that we had. And then so many people came and was like, you're evil, you're bad, you're wrong, this is fucked up. Like, they literally labeled Aubrey as the bad guy, as the villain, saying, oh, you're manipulating your wife and you're manipulating this. Like, he was labeled the bad guy.
No, so that's why he's so afraid of being the bad guy and so attached to not got it.
Well, and whatever else comes from his story of being the good one.
Yes, totally. And like, that even in itself is like, oh, no wonder, like, you're so attached to this external thought and opinion about you. And
well, it really highlights, like, the safety that is granted to those who join into groupthink and group values, and not saying things that go against that. Because the moment you externally express yourself and you let people know that your identity, your way of life, there is a different experience that can be had, that is being had, you immediately expose yourself to judgment. Immediately expose yourself to judgment. You immediately expose yourself to somebody looking at you, and this is like tribal circuitry shit, like somebody looking at you and saying, okay, we were once family. I once was able to rely on you for my basic needs. However, you have just expressed a value set that I don't agree with, that we don't agree with. Therefore, you cannot be a part of our community anymore. You must leave.
And for historically, as human beings, what does that mean when
Yeah.
we're excommunicated, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Failure.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, it's not difficult to understand and see why there is the closed mindedness, the intolerance, and the reactions to anything that challenges the group collective consciousness, especially when we're living in a society where the tribal values are no longer just like you plus the 50, 100, couple hundred people you live with in your small community, in your small town. It is now worldwide.
Yeah.
Your individual views comes up against the global tribe.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with the advent of the internet. And Aubrey's a 5'1". He's on the internet. He's got his podcast. He is global. His identity, his consciousness has gone global.
Yep.
Which means that the moment he expresses himself, now every single human who has access to the internet has the capability to be a threat to him.
Yep.
And this goes into the Gate 59, where he talks about how like sexual attraction is actually based off of fear, but that this fear doesn't happen until the other person enters the room. Well, at this level, the room has gone beyond just like the physical proximity and is now expanded to the entire world.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
For somebody who is in a position of leadership, authority, and global recognition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He was not prepared for that conversation.
No.
No. Like,
But it's a conversation that needed to be had.
totally.
Like whether the collective consciousness collective, whether they're ready, they think they're ready for it or not. The reason why I was so obsessed with it and started taking notes immediately, because I was like, oh my God, this is the conversation that we're needing to have right now in this world so fucking badly.
So badly. And it was, I've put on display of why it needs to be had. Like all of the reasons. His response to it, his reaction to it is such a mirror of the larger picture. And I could relate so much to Dr. John of feeling like I'm talking to a fucking wall. And I'm just like, homie, I'm looking out for you. You're not looking out for you. You're not looking out for the people. And like you're trying to reframe it right now, whether you realize it or not. You're reframing it as though I have these insane thoughts and feelings
Mm-hmm.
that are against humanity. When in reality, like, you need to listen.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta figure this shit out. Like, if you want to be talking deep shit, like, we'll get deep. But, like, don't be mad when the deep comes up. Like, I loved at one point, Dr. John was like, you want to go there? And I was like, yeah. Yeah. He's like, all right, no, I'm asking. You want to go there? We'll go there. We'll go there. We'll go
Mm-hmm.
there. Like we will go, and then I see it nonstop too on the internet and this and that. It's just like constant this like rebuttal and like literally like people just like purging and like puking, like, oh my God, I can't believe you're saying this. And it's like, if we don't identify the problem, how can we fix it? If we don't identify the defect, how can we
Mm-hmm.
fix it? This is what we're talking about are, yes, heinous in nature, violent in nature. It's a lot and it exists. And if you aren't prepared to have that conversation, you have to recognize why you're not prepared. And there is nothing wrong with setting boundaries. What is a problem is when you respond in the way that Aubrey did to a person that has done the work in these deep dark, and like even just being like, I read in the book like, and this tribe and da 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 da, and he's like, Dr. John's like, so you've met the tribe? And he's like, no, but I've read about them and I'm connected to them. And he's like, oh, so you don't know them? Okay. So anyways, like it's like
Yeah.
love the way like here's Dr. John being like, I've worked with 300 people, 600 people through this one thing. Like, how many pedophiles, how many so on and so forth. Like, how many victims of the crime have I worked with? Like, and he thought for for Aubrey, where he's at, is it made sense for him to portray himself as better than, because facing his lack of awareness, facing his fears was way too hard in that moment. And
Mm-hmm.
Dr. John went, well, here we are. You want to play?
Mm-hmm.
You want to play that game? We'll play it. But that's what the system does every single day. And that's, again, I have so much, I don't care if people are able to confront it. I'm good at playing the game. I'll play the game. I'll play the game. And it's a dirty one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think unfortunately we had, with the Black Lives Matter and everything that happened in 2020, we had such a, I kept saying it, I kept repeating it. Now is the time. We need to take advantage of this opportunity. We can rewrite the like we are making policy changes at a global level. Now is the opportunity to get the shit in that needs to be done, to have the conversations, to face the reckonings, to do the things. Like now is the time. And unfortunately, what I've realized too with humanity is like we search for those moments, those intense moments, right? It's like no wonder abuse occurs because we're all kind of just like collectively like leeching to get that adrenaline rush, to feel like that 39:55 of like, let me like I'm gonna feel the thing and have the outburst. And then they all went away.
Mm-hmm.
All of this was was still occurring. It
Mm-hmm.
was occurring before, but it couldn't be stuff under the rug anymore. So in 2020, it said, "Hey, homies that aren't paying attention, we're here. We're
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna do the thing, right?" And it was so in people's faces that they were forced
Mm-hmm.
to face it. And then they disappeared because the
Mm-hmm.
next moment came. The
The
next
distraction, the distraction.
distraction came.
Mm-hmm.
The distraction came. And now here we are again. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, homies, this is deep.
Mm-hmm.
This runs through our veins. It runs in every crack that people have no idea. This isn't a solid, like you mentioned too, like this isn't a singular figure.
No.
This is This has been carefully curated for thousands of years. So, like, maybe not get distracted.
I mean, to be fair, empathetically, like I
Like, I don't,
understand. I understand why people choose distraction, because the weight of it all
It's a lot.
is a lot. It is the gate, it's the 5125s, the agitation and awakening. And if you're not prepared for that, the level of fear that is going to be induced in your system is going to be fucking mighty.
Just like the people that are under-resourced and commit heinous acts of violence, right?
Right.
Because the fear that's induced because they're not prepared for whatever life was given. It's like we're so deeply, deeply intertwined. Our problems come down to the same things. We
Mm-hmm.
all have the same basic feelings about it and why we act the way we do, actually. Like it comes down to that fear, but the way we exist and survive has to look different. It has to. And the quicker we can work on understanding ourselves, our own boundaries, and this is what I've preached to people too, is like instead of like going all in on the Epstein files right now, if your capacity can't do it, if this is new for you, if reading case files is new for you, there is nothing wrong with being like, I can't go in on that. We need you somewhere else. What
Mm-hmm.
can you do? What feels enough in your soul? What allows you to take the path that you're craving to take for humanity without crushing you and destroying you and stripping you of the path that we need you to take?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's your gift. If it's not following X, Y, or Z, that is fine. What is it? And I think a lot of people don't get that message either.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to be succumbed and just inundated with all of this. That's fine. Like Destiny, you're like, I want to know all the whys, right? I came into this world like, here we are, time to party. Like we're gonna swim in the depths. Here we go. Like, and you swim in the depths too. That's okay if like your purpose or your body, your experience isn't meant to swim in the same depths. It's meant to swim in a different depth that I don't exist in. So I need you there.
Mm-hmm.
We need you there.
Yeah. But I think at the same time there is a level of surface awareness that cannot be sidestepped. Granted, there
Yeah.
are people on this planet who I don't believe are likely to ever in this lifetime be capable of sitting with the truth of this reality.
Mhm.
And I think that's also where you get a lot of deaths, right? You get the people leaving in masses because what's happening is happening.
Whether you want to face it or not.
Whether you want to face it or not, it's happening. When you look at it from the side of the evil shit that's happening, that has been happening, everything from the present back to the past, and you have everything from the present into the future, you have a direction that we are leading in, that we are going. And unfortunately, the direction that we are going in order for us to get there, means that as you walk forward, you have to walk forward with more awareness of the past, of the reality, of truth.
Yep.
And so if you can't handle that, you're likely to leave because the truth is coming no matter what.
No matter.
Or you get so disenfranchised that you fucking go crazy. And maybe you even turn into the very thing that you've been judging this whole entire time because it puts you too much in your fucking amygdala, it puts you too much in survival. But you can't not know. But you can go, okay, cool. So I know that there's a ring of people that are running this world that are abusers, that are pedophiles, that are doing insane, heinous shit. Okay, you can stop there. You don't need to go subject yourself to see the photos, to see the videos.
Mm-hmm.
For most people, I'm going to probably recommend that you don't because I've seen some of it and it's fucking wild and there will be scars.
Mm-hmm.
You can't unsee that.
Nope.
So if you're not strong enough to handle that pain, to weather that battle, then at least allow yourself to know what's happening and to go, okay, there's a problem. Then at least maybe allow yourself to see, well, where is that bleeding through? Okay, if I can't subject myself to the case files and I can't look at that, can I look at the ways in which that is bred within the medical system? Can I see the truth as it's bred within our food system, our school system,
Mm-hmm.
our economics, the way in which we work? Like, you need to find at what point you can identify with and work with that truth. Because the truth is the truth is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
It's everywhere. So if you can't go to the high level of deep diving into actually going into the world of the evil people and placing yourself there, well, you are already within the world of the evil people because they're the ones running it, and we can admit that and know that. Okay, so then where else can you look? Where else can you be of service? Where else can you allow that pain to energize you into fighting whatever battle you feel equipped to fight? But it's kind of like when war comes knocking at your back door,
It
you,
doesn't care if you're ready or not.
it doesn't care if you're ready or not.
No.
And that's the thing where we have the convenience of not fighting when a war is currently present because of the reality that has been structured, which is exactly what they wanted. But if you broke this down into like, what are our most basic needs? Our most basic needs are making sure we have food, we have clean water, we have fire, and we have shelter. If you went out and lived in the wild, which you could do, and get those four basic needs met, our ancestors did it for a very long time. If there's a threat in your environment, there's a fucking threat in your environment. You can't just be like, I'm going to put my headphones in, I'm going to smoke this blunt, I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do to distract myself and to hide. Like, you maybe can go hide in your hole, but the only way you're likely to do that is if you don't have any family, you don't have any friends, you don't have anybody that you care about that you're then forced to protect or driven to protect.
Mm-hmm.
Selfishness is the only way that you're going to be able to distract yourself from that and go, la, 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 this isn't happening. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. The bear's here. It doesn't matter. You don't have food and you haven't eaten for 2 fucking weeks, my dude. So what are you going to do? Like, us as humans in that environment,
We do what needs to get done. And that's
you
where
do what needs to get done.
we've criminalized, that's where we have criminalized trauma responses because at the end of the day, we still are fighting for our rights. Right now,
Mhm.
healthcare has been stripped, so on and so forth, and all of these things are constantly being stripped or threatened and dangled like a pawn and a toy, and it's just dangling there and it's dangling there. And this is what happens, and this is what with so many people I've worked with and people I've studied, it's never that their needs have ever been met. It's actually quite the opposite. Their needs were never met on multiple fucking levels at a systemic level that controlled it and allowed it to exist. And they couldn't get their resources met. So they went and they did add X, Y, and Z, or they became so isolated or so angry and so ingrained and or just unable to cope. We call it spillover in the field because it's what we're seeing right now happen too. It's like when too many, and I see it all the time, and I've had so many people and kiddos that are considered perpetrators in sexual abuse or like this trauma reactive sexualized behaviors that are displayed, they're technically what the perpetrators are, right? And it's like what I've found happens is that the caregivers focus on the behavior, and what's left is, and so they're working on all of these behaviors and say it's like you have to do well in school, you have to do well in the home, you can't fight, you have to get A's, you have to get B's, you have to eat healthy, you have to do your chores, you have to go to sports, you have to get a good night's sleep, so on and so forth. So then the kiddo starts doing all this behavioral reprogramming, right? The problem still exists. So what do we see? We see it come out in a different way. Yeah, they're no longer hitting their foster siblings. They're no longer getting in violent, physical, aggressive fights. They're no longer verbally aggressive, and doing X, Y, and Z. They're not stealing anymore. What are they doing now? Now they're perpetrating in sexual violence and trauma reactive sexualized behaviors. Now those are coming out. Then you try and control those, and then like it's just the behavioral approach, this carceral and punitive measures we take. We see the behaviors instead of saying, well, the behaviors are a representation of something else, something within. We say those behaviors are bad, so they need to stop. What has caused the behavior? What has caused the behavior? And a lot of times it's under-resourced, lack of opportunity. And it comes down to simple things such as that, which creates exposure to violence, sexual violence, exposure to opportunities where this thrives, exposure to needing support, right? Like this whole, the fact that the survivors, Epstein survivors, of course, look at who they were. Kiddos on the run. Those were my populations. Those are my populations I've worked with. They are the most vulnerable because they can be exploited, because their needs aren't getting met. So someone can come along and say, hey, I have an opportunity for you. Do you want a roof above your head for 2 hours? Maybe some food? Yeah, that sounds pretty fucking good. Now you have money. You have money so you're able to get a bus on a bus for transportation. You have money so you're able to go to the store now and get what you wanted or had been stealing, or you're able to pitch in for your parents' electricity bills or your caregiver's electricity bills. You're able to do the thing. So of course you're gonna, yeah, yeah, I'll come.
Because we're bred and wired for survival
Yeah.
at its most basic foundation. And limitations exist. And when limitations are present, then we have to work within those limitations and find solutions to get our needs met. And the very thing that you just described is also like, so we labeled and said, okay, it was the just most recently, let's just say, because fucked up shit was happening. Okay. The Industrial Revolution came along. Everybody thought it was the bee's fucking knees, that it was just the solutions to all of our problems. Because before we were in these communities, we were living off of the land, we were like struggling to get our basic needs met. Granted, there was also a lot of violence and corruption still existing. Why? Because people were doing the power game of I want my needs met, and this is how it gets done. So then we had the Industrial Revolution come on. We had capitalism start up. We had these systems that were created and formed that provided everyone's basic needs and then some, which is what we have all bought into, which is what we continue to feed into every single day, which is the very system that funds the people who are doing the evil things. So we have benefited. off of the creations of evil.
Totally.
And if we aren't willing to see that, then we never get to the finish line of consciousness. And that is exactly what Dr. John was trying to say. There are benefits and drawbacks to both sides. To both sides. And if people want to see it, there's proof all over.
You just have to look around. Like it's so simple. Exploitation just knows, like, and that's the thing, people get very hung up on, like pedophilia and child molestation and rape, and it's an extremely sensitive area, right? Of course, I know why it's an extremely sensitive area. It's just a form. It's just a form of exploitation. It's just a form of violence, right? And it's until we like look at it in that way, like we're just not going to solve it. We're not going to solve it. It's a form, it's a creation of something larger. It's a larger problem than just the individual itself. Because if it was just the problem of the individual, then it wouldn't be perpetuating and so widespread, right?
Mm-hmm.
It would be a defect real quick. Like,
we could kill this one person. You could have the situational ethics that say, if we just went back and killed Hitler when he was a baby,
would have never happened.
would have never happened. So, okay, cool. So we can kill babies so long as you're killing them in the name of saving millions of people.
Yep.
Which goes back into the very point that he was making, situational ethics. You can be the villain just as well as you can be the victim. It's all just depending on the response in the now to the situations that are happening. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah.
So I think it would be great for people to be like, okay, cool. Situation's happening. Evil people are running the world. People are doing all this stuff. I'm a part of it. Now what the fuck am I gonna do?
Yeah.
Like that's the next conversation. That's the next conversation is, okay, we've had the conversation, we've heard it, we've understood it. Now what the fuck do we do?
Which is the most beautiful. That's like the time.
Yeah. Because then we all get to be agents and creators of the world that we're living in, as opposed to being asleep and existing in a world where it's run by darkness. It's run by forgetting and separation.
You want to talk about giving a person agency is like then, but it doesn't, like this whole like victim mindset, and like by looking at it like you're dwelling and you're a victim, da 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 da. The whole approach Aubrey has is like, no,
We just don't look. We just don't look.
that actually is making you more of a victim.
Mm-hmm.
You get to reclaim your stance in time. How fucking cool is that?
Mm-hmm.
No one said it was going to be easy. No one says it's gonna, like, that's where like our own entitlement comes in, right? Is like, as human beings,
Everything has been made easy for us. That's our fucking problem.
that's it. Now you get to make a fucking choice, and then you get to make a choice after that and a choice after that. You get to now take action. And if people are concerned about agency, I mean, here it is.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about empowerment.
Yeah. But you know, the last thing I'll say is that like this is the secondary part of the thought process that I took this person through, that I went through with you earlier, of like, okay, you went through that, you did the bad things, now you've woken up, now you've got morals, you've got ethics, you would never do that again. You've maybe then started to make amends, figure out how you can make it better between your people. Okay, cool. Now you died, that's over. You come and you realize, okay, you were God. who was the victim, was the perpetuator, was everything. You were the one who, in your own forgetfulness, created all of that. Now you're being asked to create again, to make a different decision. Can't you empathize and see that, like, maybe that being would, like, ooh, fuck, let me actually take a minute. Let me think about and let me look at all sides. Let me be in that place of omniscience and omnipotence and be like, okay, so I know that something that I think is good could end in something that is actually bad, and something that I think is bad could end in something good. Well, then where is my compass for decision making, for becoming a conscious creator? Because I know that I'm going to have to experience my creation, and I'm going to be responsible for my creation, and on all levels. And I've proven to myself that I can do things that can hurt myself and other people. I'm capable of that. How do I not do that again? The only way to not do that again is to have lived through all of those different experiences and unified all of those experiences, and then taken the wisdom that you've learned through all of those experiences, all possible layers and levels and lenses, and then used that unified perspective to make a decision and to then move forward, while then also accepting and knowing that you may also fuck up again.
Totally. And you know what looks better with then it looks so much better, and people want accountability more than anything these days. Accountability doesn't exist with simply words, and this is where Gene Key 31 comes into play too, and I see it just non-stop. Oh my gosh, it's not, humanity has utilized words as a manipulative tool because it works. And this is where we have to wake the fuck up and like be like, well, it walks like a duck, it talks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, says it's a duck, but actually it's saying it's a bear. So I'm gonna believe it's a bear. Words are not simply the words coming out. It's not simply the things coming out of my mouth right now. We need to understand communication as the tool that it is. There are so many non-verbal things that exist in communication. We communicate daily through action. What does action actually look like? Release this connection. Like words are just so freaking powerful. And the problem is like we get so hung up on what sounds good based on our own experience and what we want in the moment. But like who's doing the thing?
Mm-hmm.
And if
it's just our attempts to understand life and to categorize life. That's it. Because there's the experience, and then there's the words that we attach to the experience to explain the experience, which is truly only needed when you're trying to relay that information to somebody else who didn't also experience it, and or you're trying to connect with another person who did experience it to compare and contrast to say, was your experience of this thing and this event the same experience that I had, or was it different?
And just because it's different doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Right. Or that you're wrong or this is wrong. Like, again, that goes into every single fractal, every single possible expression of God is doing this exact same thing, is having an experience. Every single one of those, take it just 8 billion people, every single person on the face of this planet is having its own experience of this same world. But we're also all living in different worlds and different realities and having different viewpoints and using different languages. But we're all here. We're all coexisting in the same space. which is God, and all of its fractal little pieces that shattered off of itself, that forgot itself, that's attempting to reorganize itself and reunify itself.
Mm-hmm.
There is no right or wrong, good or bad in that. It is just what that fractal version experienced based off and thought, and it's all of it. So it's not fundamentalist, or it's not dangerous to actually take the knowing of unity consciousness and unity beingness and bring it all the way down here.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of how do we do that? Where do we place that? And then how do we work with it once we've accepted that? Because now we know.
Yeah.
All right, Miss Corrine, tell me about yourself and your professional background and why we had the beautiful discussion that we had.
Yeah. So I'm working on, and I have been working on embracing the title of a criminologist because that's really what it is. And understanding that no one was going to give me that title or give me permission to use that title besides myself has been super interesting to work through in itself. So technically, I'm a criminologist, which is really understanding and studying the science of crime. And where I differ is I've really honed in and specialized on victimology, systemic violence, and done so in a way to prevent future violence. A lot of what I've realized is the way in which trauma is completely taken out of the equation when it comes to the criminal legal system. And that is the core of my being. That is the foundation of my purpose. So I have come into this world with this trauma, just like understanding of trauma and the way it pushes things out into the world at a systemic level and individual level, and found the language for it. Um, so I have my master's in forensic psych and then my bachelor's in criminal justice, where that really is where I got my concentration in victimology, sexual offenses, and violence prevention. And then my forensic psych, I deepened my specialty, really dove into the behavioral analysis. And on top of it, I've explored outside of the typical legal or typical education system. I've look to blend energetics and neuroscience to really reduce cycles of violence. And in regards to this conversation, human trafficking was my first area of technical specialty. I had wanted to, in undergrad, I thought I was going to leave undergrad, apply to be in the FBI for human trafficking. Um, and then the world does what it does. And I had to accept that part of my logic to doing that and being so fixated on going into the FBI for human trafficking, and this is from specializing both in the offender and the victim standpoint, um, was my own coping mechanism and my own way of running and diving myself into a world so that needs so much presence that I wouldn't be able to have anything else. And so that was my way of trying to avoid what I needed to. So I didn't take that path. And here we are.
And here we are. And you had been doing a podcast for a while, right? Of
Mhm.
going into some true crime with comparing what happened to the serial killer's human design. Is that correct?
Yes, which I am starting back up.
Oh, so exciting. So
Yeah,
timely.
this conversation is like the trigger and solidifying of it.
Fuck yeah.
Fun
And what is
fact,
that podcast called?
true crime and human design.
I love a rhyme.
I know.
And what, if you could summarize your experience up until this point, and you could share a message with the masses, what would you want to say to people on this topic of victims, abusers, and really digging into the nuance, the psychology, the energetics, the nervous system, everything that you have looked at, what would be the thing that you would want to say to help people understand?
Two words pop into my head: compassion, humility. We so often have this idea of what things look like. And that's the thing with human trafficking, too, where so much of the collective is shocked right now. But I know what human trafficking actually looks like. It's not in what they've shown us on TV. It's not like just in a third world country. Actually, it's always been extremely prominent here. It's how the United States was created, was through human trafficking. So the foundation of our existence, if you are in the United States, and I only say that in regards to the United States because I don't want to speak on other levels of which I have not resided in. Um, but I mean, exploitation goes back to, I mean, thousands of years. The A form of slavery, one of the first and prominent forms of slavery, were child brides. And it's just never been addressed. And this is what I tell people all the time, is that you can only stuff things so far under a rug before the rug says, I don't have any more space. And then you can start seeing it spill over. We've been doing that for thousands and thousands of years. We sold the daughters, our children, in order to get land and royalty and conquest and dominate. And we expanded upon that to create exactly what we're living in right now. And we've never fully addressed how that contributes to where we are right now.
Mhm.
So we see it. Of course, we see it.
So where does compassion and humanity fit into that? Why are those the two words that you want to speak to people?
Because we are so quick to judge other people. And in order for us to be better, we not only have to be compassionate to others, we have to be compassionate to ourselves. And we have to embrace a level of humility that really, really says and really truly understands that we don't know what we don't know. We don't know everything. And I think that's part of the beauty of life that's got really lost, is that life is a lesson. And we have the opportunity to continuously learn in this lifetime. It doesn't make us less at all. The problem is when we utilize what we don't know, what we don't understand, in areas where harm is really, really prominent and harm does exist. So saying you don't know something is, I think it's fantastic. I think it's beautiful. I say I don't know all the time. Um, and that's where that humility really, really needs to come into play of not only do you not know, you've only lived your experience. And if your life is filled with the experiences of your life, another's is filled with the experience of theirs. So having compassion, approaching the world instead of this what are you doing type of thing. Why are you doing it? Why is the person doing it?